Dobar dan svima, mislim da možemo da krenemo. Ja ću prvo da vam samo dam kratak uvod na srpskom, pa ćemo onda da pređemo na engleski s obzirom naše goste. Ja sam Nenad, jedan od osnivača IPHub-a i želeo bih se da vam poželim pod dobrodošlicu. Koliko od vas je prvi put odao IPHub-a? Dosta vas, da, dobro. Znači, mi smo deo globalne mreže koja radi u preko 100 lokacija širom sveta. Ovdje u Beogradu smo u nekadašnjem studiju 10 radi u Beogradu, takozvane zadružne palati. Tako ako pomislite šta je to IPHub, to je u stvari jedna zadruga 21. veka. Okupljamo zajednicu preko 400 članova, otvorili smo decembra 2014. godine i u okviru različitih naših aktivnosti, jedna od ovih je takođe meetupovi sa našim članovima koji sede ovde, koji onda praktično mogu da upoznaju vas i širu javnost šta je to što oni rade. Večeras naša zvezda, Sava Marinković, će biti jedan od naših gostiju, da kažem domaćina, bolje da kažemo tako, s obzirom da je ovde u Kako skoro već, koliko, 3 godine, tako? Još malo pre. Da. I specijalna prilika u stvari zato što Sava je ugostio mali studenta, tako, iz MIT-a, koliko, na 2 nedelje, tako? 3 nedelje. Tako da će ovo biti prilika u stvari da pričam malo o startupu koji Sava vodi, zatim malo o toj povezanosti između jedne institucije kao što je MIT, to je studenta i razvoja, tržišta, i generalno scalinga van granica Srbije. So, I'll also switch in English just shortly for our guests. Welcome to IPHub, we're happy to host you, and this will be an opportunity to learn more about the collaboration between startup scan my skin and MIT. Let's see. Yeah, maybe you would like to join us, yeah, so that people know who you are. And Sam also prepared a short presentation. So the idea of our agenda today is to hear a little bit about a general overview of what and how the progress is so far, and then also at one point afterwards to actually open to Q&As so that we can actually have an interactive conversation. So feel free, to ask questions as well. Yeah?
Okay. Ja ću da pokušam sve ovo na srpskom, ali unapred neke stvari će da bude teško za mene da objasnim to. Oni će da sve na engleskom, they're going to say everything that we have in English. Ali ovu prezentaciju, ovo što pričamo oko Rast startup, kad si u startup, kako dosta ste možda ovdje već u to, ima milione male sitne stvari što dobijete od iskustva i neke stvari su, da kažem, potpuno glupi, ali ima utisak na startup. Jel mogu na engleskom možda?
I was trying to figure out, yeah.
So, when you're in a startup and you're going through various stages, you're constantly learning little lessons about everything that you're doing, about every field, and every startup is its own story, it's unique. I'll tell you about what we've gone through. It's an experience set in and of itself. And as you're doing a startup, each one is its own, like million little learnings that you get along the way. So today we'll talk about what we've done in terms of the growth that we have, and I'll tell you more about what the G-Lab guys have done coming from MIT and how we use them, we've used what they've done previous semester, and now they're here for 3 weeks to help us get into some real problems and solving some real issues that startups face. So, Gaja je rekla da moram ovo na srpskom, ali iskreno ne mogu to dobro da se objasnim. I'll have a hard time even in English explaining myself. Okay, let me see if this works. Yeah. Okay. Let's do this. Okay, so My Skin is the name of the startup, but we've done a lot of different things during that startup time. That's why now it was like, is it Teleskin, is it ScanZ? I'll explain that in terms of how we've grown. But today is a little bit touching about, we are international, we deal a lot internationally, and it's not, to do it purely from Serbia is doable. But you have to understand what your product and your market is, and we'll talk about the team and how do you connect beyond on these. So, okay. So what is MySkin? So when we started MySkin, we started with myskin.com. So MySkin is our web platform. It's social networking for skincare. So instead of making friends on Facebook, you find someone who's close to you with the same type of skin. And why does that matter? Because the way a skincare product works for you may not work the same for you and for you. And imagine this room is all the same skin type, and everyone over there is another skin type. If I say this product works well, there's a much better chance of it working for everyone in this room if we all have the same skin. And skin's a function of like, it's your genetics, your melanin levels, your environment, your lifestyle. Do you stay in the sun all day? Are you in Australia or are you in Finland? It matters how products absorb in your skin and what works. So we started with this premise. We have a product called Dermograph, which is for estheticians. So they tell you your skin type and what about your skin when you go to the spa. And then we have something that we're launching called Oku, which is your little Fitbit for skin. So you can carry that with you and scan yourself. Okay, so that's what this is. Now, everything starts with a problem in your starter. So the first problem was, so the first problem is there's a lot of new products every year, like tens of thousands of new products globally. How do you choose the right skincare product? Who here uses moisturizer? Okay. Who uses soap? Everyone uses soap? No? Okay. I'm sure that's a biased question. But that soap can dry out your skin. You can use the wrong, that moisturizer. You might like Eucerin and Nivea, and they work great or not. The problem is we found that people have a hard time finding the right advice. Dermatologists sell their own products. They have like Dr. Smith's skincare line, and he's like, ti imaš ovaj problem, evo ti kremu, baš sa moje lice na njemu, to će da radi. Are you sure, right? It's like, it's conflict of interest. And your friends tell you advice, but it's like some friend there who's in a different skin group telling you this product really works. They might intend well, but it's not the same product. It's a big industry. There's a high-paying market. 50 million professional women was our initial market, and they like to, and so we saw a big problem. So the way we did it, we figured we have to be unbiased to the skin. We started with imaging in the skin from skin cancer. So on the far left is one of our first prototypes to measure skin characteristics of mladeže i da li nešto sumnjivo ili ne, kao dermoskop za medicinu, što ako imate mladeže možete to da analizirate, da vidite ako je problematičan. Who's here is in, who makes hardware? Anyone doing hardware? Software? Okay, software is a lot easier than hardware. This is production, timelines. If you want to make something, it takes a very long time. We recognized that in the beginning, and so we built myskin.com to get customers until we got to Dermograph and launch, so that we have a ready base we can tap into. We knew we would get to what's called our Fitbit for skin, so each person can check their own skin And now we're working on this here, which is our next generation product, which is just for acne, but it's also going to be our next generation of our dermograph device. This is over a period of like several years. Like good. From that point there to here is 10 years of work. It's not so simple. So today what we're going to talk about is dermograph. And dermograph is this device you see. It tells estheticians when a person comes in what's good or not for your skin. When you get a scientific and you get like what's your moisture level, what's your redness, what's your texture, hyperpigmentation, and then they can recommend a product for you. And they say, this is good for hyperpigmentation, this is good for texture, this is good for moisture. And what's really good about this is that it brings the esthetician close to the customer, and it helps them sell more. So this is a La Prairie counter in Bloomingdale's. It's a very high-end mall outside of New York. And there's our dermograph right here. This person here is the daughter of some famous Serbian soccer player, football player. I forgot her name. By chance, she worked at La Prairie, and we're like, okay. So she's back there. I forgot what her name is, but they used dermograph, which you see right there. And when people got this analysis, they were 3 times more likely to buy products. And when you think of sales, we helped La Prairie sell more products. So we were selling to brands. And when they did buy, they spent 50% more. So it was really, we validated it, we had it across several product lines. When we launched this, they went to 28 cities to use our product. We built it here. We built everything here. We put it together, we programmed it, we worked on the user experience, we got feedback, and I'll tell you how, but that made it very successfully for La Prairie when we launched with them. Okay, maybe.
I'm so impressed with the success of this event, with the interest from clients, with the $10,000 that we generated as a result, and I'm anxious to do it again.
Okay, that's like plug in. Here's the customer who thinks how great it is. When you're selling to investors, having live customers say how great what you're doing gets you money. Always get proof from actual customers. If you've sold them, if they've clicked on your site, if they've used your product, get customer testimonials as much as you can. We videotaped a lot of these afterwards. We put them into statements, and it's real. There's a corporate term for that too, like, I forgot what it is, but the more customers you put in, the more it means people actually believe in what you're doing, and they will pay money for that too. And that's what you're trying to get to, is pay money. Okay. So I'll just touch on scaling globally. We're across in North America. We have some systems in Canada, US, India, Australia, Singapore, a few more places. These are some of the prominent aesthetic customers that we have. And when you go into these markets, who here is selling in the US? Anyone right now? Okay. So in the US, Northeast is different than South, mindset-wise. It might be one big market, but it's actually seven grouped markets. So if that matters for you, then you have to. Why does that matter? Anyone take a guess why it matters?
So you have to have a different marketing approach.
Yeah. you may get the wrong feedback from one. You may get right feedback from one and try to apply it in the other.
Like San Francisco startup with Giuseppe, what was it called? It was a perfectly acceptable thing.
Yes.
In the valley and then...
Yes, absolutely. That's the biggest problem. It's like the flyover states of like people who are like, in the middle of America, things very differently than in some product lines for sure. But outside, it's why Walmart made it so big. They only targeted rural, smaller towns, and they grew when they didn't have much of a presence in larger cities until later. Okay, so, but this is something that when you're looking at, even in Europe, selling into Germany can be different into France. And so what we did is we really, you have to look at what the markets are when we're going through on this. So I'm going to stop on that right now. I can intro the G-Lab guys. I could tell if prvo da li ima neke pitanje, to može da bude na srpskom naravno, ali do sada šta smo radili. Znači, to je naš put do sada. We make these German graphs here, we sell it, we're installing them, there's people on the team here now. I mean, we're delivering them in Australia, we're delivering them in the US, all remotely here.
Kako bi vam to bio marketački pristup i generalno B2B pristup ka distributerima ili kako je to sve funkcionisalo? Kako ste dolazili do nekih prvih klijenata u inostranstvu i ta neka priča možda?
So mi smo imali deo ekipu u Americi, u New Yorku i prvo oni su tu i oni, mislim, taj deo ekipa je najbliže tržište. It's very hard to do remotely. If you're selling a product individually, you got to be in the market. We now do web demos of the Dermograph, and we do a WebEx, and we demo these to people who are interested. So now we got it to a system where we can do this remotely. But that's after much learning of doing it in person in the market. So if you're going to sell in the US, you have to at least travel there frequently to do it. So when we look at product development, and for us user experience was very important, our initial product user experience and information architecture was done with a US designer and US information architect to sit in a spa. We sent them to a spa to get a facial, to get a whole spa treatment, and he's just thinking, I know, it was tough, right? So he's thinking like, okay, how do I convert this into an experience that fits within a spa? And then we built from that as the base and on the experience. But you have to, if you're going to be in Australia, Australia is kind of closer, but for us, our starting market was the US. We had to be there. We talked with many customers over time to get to the right kind of model.
Okay. And just like a tip or something. If we're looking to expand, for example, abroad, should we hire someone from that country you're looking to expand into, or can it be a local resource as well first in expanding to other markets?
Yeah, that's tough. So we have a similar problem now, because we're going to expand into Germany with our medical product. And the German market, for example, sales, they love Germans speaking in like who knows the market. It's just, it's easier for them. So you have to judge on it, but if you aren't getting traction with the person, you have to quickly decide, I gotta get someone local or not. But when you get that resource, you're still not sure of the product market fit. So that resource that you get should be temporary or on a kind of like a success-based structure.
The idea was it should probably be someone who has the insight into the market and who can elaborate on the product market.
Yeah, but if you're the founder or if you're in the founding team, you want to get close to the customer yourself. You can't outsource it. and you got to go there. So the best thing to do is you have to visit. You have to be in them. You have to visit the market. You can get someone on, but you have to be closely tied into it. So if you're hiring someone here, who's someone who's good in Germany doesn't necessarily mean they're good in France or England. So you have to make a judgment call. It just depends on the product. But especially Germany and France, they're very specific locally. But the German set of German-speaking countries is much closer together for selling into.
So I think we have two more questions, I think, about this before we go and go into this. But maybe just to summarize, then, what are the basic team capacities that a startup should have before actually going to the international market? What are the minimum things?
Okay, so there's two ways. The first one is, are you already selling here? And is that a big market or not? So if you're only selling here, you just need the capabilities of it's a broad question. If you have a simple, the person who owns the product has to be into the market. It's the Ben Horowitz definition of product manager, right? The product owner. They have to know the market, they have to know the product, and they have to define all the aspects behind it. So if you're going to be in that, you have to, the team is smaller. If you're only going to go abroad, then you don't need a lot in that market. You can have a lot of the team here, but you need someone to understand who the customer is, be able to translate that into what the product is itself, and that could all be here, if it's out of Serbia. But you got to scale lean, because you take a risk. Let's say you take a risk to go into Germany. You think there's an opportunity, but it may be a very long time before you get the right sales and the right fit. So you want to stay very lean when you're doing that until you're sure. You can risk it if you have a lot of funding or a lot of resources, but you want to do it as much as is necessary and not more until you get that fit. The most important part is, do you have the right fit with what the market is buying, and then you can figure out how to scale on that.
Do you want to pick up two more questions and then we go?
Yeah, and we can have more questions after the GLS too.
So, yeah.
Because I'm just going to go after what you said last. So basically, I know Dr. Bandic, so I know where they started from, and maybe the rest of the guys should just know the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
Why Dermoscope, why did you tackle that product specifically? And as far as I know, because I know him for a long time, I knew that the whole thing was about mole scanning and just preventing cancer, and it was the skin cancer, right? So from what I can see now, and I've been following your startup or a company now for a while, it seems to me like you pretty much pivot from his initial idea, maybe into something that is more commercial, I would say. So I would say that you were probably looking for a proper product market fit throughout these years and pivoted, significantly from the initial idea, which was more medical to me than aesthetics, which can now be seen from this presentation. So I just wanted to ask you, how did that change? Because I knew that you built team in Serbia. He told me that you had struggles with finding the right team to build this and push this forward. So can you just tell us a bit how you then connected to the US or other countries and then choose, the markets and then change the product and develop new products?
Yeah. So it's a great question, and it's great to have that familiarity. We started with the technology around mole scanning, and the hardest thing to do is figure out what's the technology, what's the product, and how do you make that fit to the right market. The technology was solid. The challenge is, how do you make money off of scanning moles? And there's a lot of dynamics. So in this instance, if I can give you a sensitivity that this is basal cell carcinoma, My product model is I can do cost reimbursement from the healthcare system. I could have people pay for scan, and I could have, and there's a psychology of what, of how do I get people to scan themselves with an app. When we started, there were something like 20 melanoma startups in Boston when I was a business school student there, and none of them made it. This one company called Melafine got up to a 300 million valuation. They were IPO'd. Today they're worth like 5 million. And they got bought, and it's 5 million with another product line. They're still going. They try to sell these big devices. They got held back by the FDA twice. Super costly. You lose money. What we did find is actually, so we had a GLAB team before these guys. They were the guinea pigs. They were the first ones in Serbia. They came to look at teleskin. We called it the most scanning teleskin. And then we had, they did a lot of the ground market work. And then we had another team, another GLAB team 2 years later. These guys are the best though. And we looked at mobile applications, said, look, this is a trend that's growing. And from that, we used the work that they did to go into an accelerator in Denmark and win. So we won. Yeah. So we won like 250,000 euros cash, which is great. No equity loss, and plus then we had some Danish investment in that. And at the time when they launched the iPhone app called SkinScan, it was the #1 downloaded iPhone app in Denmark. So they are, so they're building that model out. But just a couple weeks ago at Phone, they had a case study competition on Skin Vision, which is a competitor, and they asked me to give the industry perspective. Skin Vision, that even they have a very hard time scaling up. They had a business case written about it this year, and they spread it out to try to learn what could other case teams figure out about it. But it's a hard model. What Yadrin, Dr. Bondage is working on now, I think, is very strong, the approach. What we realized here was if we tell you the moisture of your skin in a skincare product, you're not going to die from that. And so this one, we actually, the technologies were very closely related, but we found that this was going to be much easier to get in, and we weren't going to have a regulatory letter that says stop your work. So it's a constant balance, and especially if you have strong. This happened when I was doing the business plan competitions. We had 5 of us in this. 2 MBAs, 2 entrepreneurs, and then like the tech guy. The 2 entrepreneurs were a PhD in physics, but they did a web startup and they were making like 10 million a year out of their dorm rooms, like at the time. They're in San Francisco now. But the technical co-founder was like, this is my technology, I get a big percentage of everything in the company. And the other entrepreneurs were like, the other guys in the team were like, look, the technology doesn't matter if you can't sell it. And so if you're dealing in tech, you always have to be close to the market to make sure that that's fit. It's tempting because the technology feels, you can understand it, but the stupidest things make markets. And it's really like that. The dumbest thing will make a ton of money. And you're like, what the heck, So if you're following ICOs are the glossy, shiny product of today, the shiny technology of today, but many of the business models of ICOs are really, are not grounded. And I know this through a friend who just did a successful ICO. And he's still kind of like the explanation's kind of a little bit gray on that, but Yeah, that's the story. That's the storyline. So we continued with this, and in terms of aligning the thing when you have multiple products, but that's part of the reason that these guys don't want to kind of like use them as an exhibit A. Why they're here is because the business model of medicine versus cosmetics versus something else. A business-to-business model are all different, can be different. It's hard to peg everything at once, and the team has to be built to that. A B2B team is a salesperson, maybe, or a small sales team that hits large, like over-leverages their time. A web startup can do it maybe through ads, through referrals, through other ways. So you have to align by what the product is to how you scale it up.
So let's meet our guest. Would you guys like to introduce yourself? Maybe tell us like what do you do here? You know, I mean the specific role and stuff. Yeah.
Well, before we get the slides going, we have a very short presentation. We just want to say thank you for hosting us. We're very grateful to be in Serbia to experience Belgrade. We've had a wonderful time. We got very fat on coffee. And especially want to thank Sava and Alex from my team for hosting us. It's been, as much as we've helped them, they've helped us a tremendous amount just to learn about being an entrepreneur in an international country. So yeah, huge thanks for them, and we're really honored to be here to chat with you guys. So we'll go through, we have a very short slide deck. We'll introduce ourselves in short. We are all MBA students at MIT Sloan. So we all had working experience before that, and then we went back for MBA, which is a 2-year program. And part of that is a class called Global Entrepreneurship Lab, in which I think there's maybe 200 or so Sloan students all across the world that work with entrepreneurs and basically help them tackle big problems. So we go and work, we work from Boston for the first semester, and then we go on site for 3 weeks and work with them on the ground. So that's the phase that we're in right now. So we'll go through some introductions, talk a little bit more about what the class is, specifically talk about the work that we've been doing with Sava and his team, and then definitely some time for questions at the end if you guys want to just come say hi or have any questions that we can answer. So we'll go to the next one. So our nice picture. So my name is Dan. So prior to my Sloan MBA, I worked in strategy consulting for 4 years. Basically worked with a handful of consumer goods companies, B2B companies, usually consumer-facing, usually a lot bigger, but similar type of work where you're helping businesses basically tackle big problems. This past summer, I was a product manager at TripAdvisor, so really got more of the tech side of it, and then basically I'm continuing after school in technology as well.
Yeah, so I'm Turner Holthouse. I worked for 5 years in the U.S. government before this, making the transition now into the private sector. So I spent last summer at JP Morgan in their investment bank, doing leverage finance, so debt raising, and I'll be returning to JP Morgan in New York to continue in that field. And while I'm here, I'm working a lot on the financial aspects, the financial modeling and analysis.
My name's Eric. I worked for also 5 years before going to business school. I worked in analytics consulting, so we bounced around different industries, but mostly in the healthcare space. During my internship this summer, I actually worked at a healthcare startup in Boston. It was about 20 people working in the insurance payer space. And after school, I'm going back into analytics and consulting.
Great. And my name's Gabe. Similar background to Dan. I was in strategy consulting for a couple of years before school and then did private equity sales. So while working here for 3 weeks at Dermograph, I've really spent a lot of time on the sales side of it and thinking about who the customers are that really fit our product. So that's the majority of the focus I've had.
You guys look really different in the pictures.
Yeah.
We made a lot of money in those pictures.
A lot of Photoshop.
So we'll talk a little bit about why, how we ended up here. We're all second-year business school students, but as Dan mentioned, we're all taking a class called GLab, which is an abbreviation for Global Entrepreneurship Lab. And as Saba mentioned, this class has been going on for a long time. He's had teams like us in the past, and the structure of the class is really to give business school students, it's part of the action learning offerings of business school, so it's hands-on work as opposed to sitting in a class and going to lectures and so on and so forth. So the goals of this class, as stated in the syllabus, which we found funny, is understand problems and opportunities abroad, collaborate with leadership at global startups, and develop hands-on problem-solving skills. So I think it's really about doing things at real-life companies instead of learning more theoretical things. Teams consist of 4 second-year business school students, all students at Sloan. The teams are matched up with a host company, and these companies are spread out worldwide. I think the most recent count was 15 different countries. And the work is really split into 2 different parts. First, for about the first 3 months, we're working remotely. We met Saba through Skype. We set up a project plan of what he wanted us to work on, what things we could do while we were remote. And then we have this 3-week period during January where we're here meeting other people in the company, sort of accelerating our work and trying to hit a final end deliverable that helps Saba and my team.
So I'll just add one thing. So when I took this class, but when it was just US focused, and basically our goal was help the problems that keep the CEO up at night. What's the most pressing problem? And that's what they're working on right now with the project for what we're doing. There's one thing is I never, never underestimate age. I think that, whether someone is 15 or 50 is kind of irrelevant. You can be pleasantly surprised when you're not handicapped on any of that boundary, and it's really specific kind of skills or something that comes in. I think when I did it, when people who are finishing at school at different kind of ages and experience sets, I don't see them as students. I see them as they are hands-on part of the team to figure out this problem. So they keep saying they're students and everything, but it doesn't register with me. They're actually, it's sales, finance, outreach, it's business modeling, and that's the view that I'm taking with these guys. So the student thing, I'm like, really, students? It doesn't. I don't think in that way. So I just want to say that that's something that's important. I think in any case, I see. I don't know how it is, how it's evolved. There's a lot of activity in the schools now here, which I think is positive, but that's something that is a great resource of a lot of fresh insight and being pleasantly surprised and over-delivered. Not to put pressure on you guys to over-deliver, but okay.
So as we mentioned, as Eric mentioned, the first part of our project was really the off-site work, which we did back in Boston at school for the first part of the semester before we came here. What this was really focused on was we knew what the dermograph was through conversations with Saba, with our own research about the company, but now it was how does that solution, the dermograph, the product line, really fit into the market? And what is that market? How do we define it? What's the breadth of that market? How deep is it? So that was really what we were focused on, more on the academic side when we were still at school back in Boston. That really involved a lot of the customer outreach, so one-on-one interviews, as well as industry expert research, just interviewing them, trying to get a sense of what product market fit we had or what the potential to have. And then we did a lot of the secondary research, so a lot of the paid subscriptions, the library research, trying to see what trends there are, what potential trends there are, and what information we can already capitalize on. But this whole off-site work was really trying to set the groundwork of understanding the market, so when we came here, we could start to make recommendations and implement some of our findings.
Great. So I think there's some, we have a lot of friends who are doing this project in a lot of different countries, and I think our experience here is a little bit unique. And there are a couple of reasons why. I think one of them is something that Saba had touched on before. My Skin is 10 years old, and Dermograph at this point is a pretty established product. So the product's been tested, we know the customers who are using it love it. Everyone we talk to has really positive feedback, but there hasn't been a huge sales effort to date. So what we're focusing on now is, you have this great technology, you have this great product, it seems like it solves a problem that people want to solve. How do you get it into the hands of the people that need it? And I think when talking to our classmates and friends who have worked on startups, there's often a great product idea, but getting it from the idea to the product to then into the hands of someone who's going to use it and will hopefully pay you for it one way or another is the challenge. So that's, at a high level, I think that's one of the unique things about this project. We worked with Dermograph and MySkin, and also one of the unique things about our time here compared to the time that other teams are spending with startups that are much younger. So while here, I think the way we've done the work is separated by work stream. As a side note, we worked for 3 or 4 months on this in Boston before coming here, and I think 1 hour here on site with the team is equivalent to 10 hours of work done remotely. Just like in terms of the time it takes to go back and forth with people on email and the communication sort of blockages that happen if you're not face to face, we've found that it's really been helpful being here on site.
That's emblematic of any time you're working with a remote team. I mean, it gets easier. There's many more tools to bridge that, but especially if you're working on something in the U.S., especially West Coast from here, it's a pain in the ass. Someone's going to be up late or early, and you have to get very efficient in your communication.
Yeah, and we were touching on it before with your question about sales and if that person should be in the region. One of the things that's been interesting while we're here, especially from the sales perspective, is we've been doing a lot of calls with people who are on the West Coast of the US, and even just finding time to do that is really difficult. So there's a logistical challenge, I think, associated with it, outside of the cultural piece or the language piece or the product market fit piece. So yeah, I guess just like the different work streams we've had are, one of the things that a lot of startups don't do at first that we've really been focusing on right now is truly understanding the finances and the costs associated with creating the product. Especially in a company where there are a lot of different products and there's one team working on all those products, how do you figure out the actual cost of producing one product if you have a lot of people from a lot of different parts of the organization all putting time into it? So Turner's been spending a lot of time on the finances and financial modeling so we can really understand what price point you can sell at to sell this product profitably. And that sounds really simple and straightforward, but it's actually getting all that data and talking to all those people is a challenge. And Turner's done a really good job getting all that in one place and trying to figure out what is the price point at which we can break even. So that's one piece. Another piece of it that Dan and I have been working on together is sort of just customer outreach and sales. I think that's another thing where startups initially are really focused on the product. And what we've seen is that getting that into the hands of the right people, or even just having conversations with the right people, has involved a lot of outreach and work on our part. So we've been talking to all of the existing channels that Dermograph has tried to sell into so far. So that's spas and estheticians, big brands like La Prairie, and then distributors. So the way we sell in Australia right now is through a distributor who goes around and sells the product to us in existing spas, and they do a lot of that legwork so we don't have to. And then finally, the piece that Eric's been working on is what other channels exist for us to sell into that we haven't thought about. So one of the nice things I think about G-Lab and for Sava and Alex and the team is that we come in with a really fresh perspective. We've never, it's a 10-year-old company, but we just found out about it in September. We've never looked at the product before. We come in with a different perspective, and sometimes we'll revisit things that had previously been thought of as not possible or not feasible and come at it with a new lens. One of the things that Eric's been working on is reaching out to spa software companies, so the companies that sell software to different spas around the world, and seeing if there's a partnership opportunity there where you could co-sell the product, the Dermograph itself, with the software, make it one sales point for the customer, and bundle that in an attractive way for a variety of different clients. So those are basically the work streams at a high level that we've been working on today. We don't want to bore you with a lot of slides. But we're really happy to be here. Any questions you have for us, feel free to ask, but also, obviously, Sava questions are great too. And apologize for the English. English. The only two Serbian words we've learned so far are Shavabi and Rakia. That's about where it at.
Thank you guys. Good, so perfect. So we have some 30 minutes or so to kind of interact with questions and stuff. I think it would be great if we can have like, you know, short questions, short answers back, and then maybe leave afterwards for less formal questions if you feel more free like that. So anyone with a specific question in regards to the connection, the whatever that we talked about? Yeah, okay, izvolite da.
Malo sam zaposlen na početku pa nisam čuo. Koja je bila vaša uloga i ekspertiza na početku svega? Šta ste vi, IT, healthcare, koja je vaša tvoja? Da, i koja je sad vaš na početku i koja je sad vaša uloga?
Ja sam završio pre ovo sam radio u G Healthcare, medicinske sisteme. I ja sam krenuo posle škole prvo u Americi, tamo sam radio Six Sigma Black Belt na pricing and marketing for new product launches in the business. So, such an English. So my first role was we were G Healthcare IT, so it was everything that makes a hospital digital. But it was my experience was everything kind of marketing, pricing, operational, and strategy. I then became, I led our technology marketing out of Paris for Europe to launch new technology products. So at the time, General Electric would take a product they make in the US, give it to Germany and say, sell it. And my role was to look at what are the needs in Germany or France or UK and figure out new products that we could sell. So when I started into this, it was pretty much, I was strongly marketing and pricing, but I had a lot of operational experience from before school as well, and also through what I did in Six Sigma. How has that evolved? I learned a lot on patenting. I got deep into manufacturing, user experience. Like you, when you're in the beginning, you have to be aware of everything.
Were you alone in everything, or you have a co-founder or friend?
No, yeah. So there are 4 co-founders in the beginning, and so there was technical and medical, and then strategy. So my other co-founder was in the U.S. He was doing a lot of the strategy and business development.
So from the beginning, you do it all together.
Yeah. So the technical co-founders focused a lot about the product, enabling the product to exist. But as we grew, we added more people as we realized when we went to myskin.com, we needed to start getting that profile set. And then we grew as we needed. But as a founder, you end up knowing, you need to know everything, not that you're going to do everything, but it's important that you have responsibilities defined, but you have to know how to work with people and what to expect of them. So if you say, I need this tomorrow, and they're like, it's going to take 6 months, you have to know how to evaluate that. And that's part of it is building trust in a team. Like you have to, you have to define the responsibilities and then trust within each other to be able to deliver on that part. So some things that are that I don't know or that it says that you have to rely on your teammates. And it's
you wouldn't do all alone. You had to compete in the beginning.
We started. I mean, the team started growing as soon as we got our initial funding. But you do everything. I mean, until you start building a structure, the most important piece in the beginning, and this is any small team, is there an opportunity in that product market fit in the beginning? It's absolutely essential. And today, corporations think the same way. They're going to give a small team to figure something out through their innovation groups or something else. but they got to get traction and validation before they put more resources and grow.
Any other questions? Two?
Yes, you said it's important to have presence, right, in market in order to sell. Is it a problem for scaling?
Well, it depends on if you're profitably scaling or if you have investments on it. So as you scale, you have to, there's many more communication points and the communication, and so the way that you set responsibilities and tasks becomes really important. But so those things come at the next kind of layer. Once you start getting growth, things usually go kind of crazy, and then you have to start figuring out how to put in systems to manage that growth. It could be trackers, it could be something more robust, but you have to, it just depends if you're, you could be scaling in your original market and then scaling at a different rate internationally, like in another market. You're going to feel the pain point very quickly, and then you have to figure out at what point are you going to break unless you change it. Now, as long as you're making revenues, it's an easier discussion. But if you're still doing product market fit and you're scaling, but not explosively scaling, you have to balance that out. It's not. It typically you spend a lot of time trying to manage that. There's no rule of thumb on it.
Do you have anything to add to it, or shaking hands?
I would say on the scaling aspect, like, has anybody seen Shark Tank, that show? Like the first question they ask is like, what are your costs? How much does it cost you to make it? How much time? It's very specific. So in order to be able to scale or have confidence in doing that, you have to know like everything, like you're talking about, everything about the bottom line of your business. So I would just say like making sure you know how much it costs, how much you can produce, what's your capacity. That not only will attract investors, but also the confidence of how fast or how much can we scale before we're going to change up our whole cost structure.
There was another question behind.
Yeah, thanks for, and thanks to you guys for coming. If I met you and saw this problem, I would ask you if you've come across the discipline entrepreneurship and the 24-step framework taught by Bill Allett. And number 2 on the list is your beachhead market. So when you put the market segmentation there of females 25 to 60, I don't think that that's really exactly your beachhead market. And then at some point you have to create a defensible beachhead market in order for you to grow, which then you can quantify your value proposition. So if you can just give us some maybe better explanation on how you can move your beachhead market, and probably that's the issue you're facing.
I think you're making 2 great points. So the first one, in terms of the frameworks, there are excellent frameworks that distill the wisdom of many past startups and entrepreneurs. Steve Blaine's Startups Owner Manual, I think it's called. It's fantastic. Like, you could follow that, but a lot of these, especially like Lean Canvas or these, I'm not quite familiar with the 24-step one, but to me it sounds like it's in the same road. There's more and more wisdom. When we started, there was it was a different game, especially hardware, and now there's a lot more appreciation of being lean when you're coming through and staying focused on the product market. So how did we look at beachhead? When we looked at, I'm a big believer in understanding the psychology of early adopters. So it's Crossing the Chasm is the original book on how do you get, what's the psychology of the first people who are going to buy your product. And when we were pitching initially, is who's going to pay your first $1 to buy your product, and really go in on it. So what we tried to do when we launched on, as you can tell, there's 3 markets, but I'll focus on Dermograph. When we started on Dermograph, we wanted to do a regional launch, and we focused just on the Northeast, because we can make it to a lot of spas physically, we can demo, and we can get a sense of this. We didn't, we weren't we didn't, there were interests across when we posted our website, but we stayed mainly in Manhattan and New York looking at spas and then figuring out what's the product market dynamic? Are they buying it? Is this unique to New York or not? So our plan was always take a region in the US, figure out can we scale from it. And then what ended up happening is we got interest from brands as well. We did two approaches. We were basically doing experiments. Is the mom and pop spa going to be able to sell? Or is this something that a brand like L'Oreal will want to buy and buy hundreds of? And it's a judgment call about how you do it. You can't, you can focus on this, but then you have to see how much time is that going to take and how much effort it's going to be. So beachhead / early adopter, that matters. What we thought about when we looked originally at the melanoma stuff is, can we get Serbia, and then we can go from there. But what we're doing now in this project that we're kind of leading into. So Dermograph, we're figuring out what's the right model now, and these guys are helping to figure that out. For our Scan Z product that we're doing, which is our acne analysis, we have our beachhead is the UK and NHS, and selling into their network. We have a strong fit, strong dynamic, strong roadmap there. We don't care about the other ones. You can get easily distracted in other markets as you're chasing. So there's discipline involved and a lot of judgment calls. There's no easy answer. You're in your own part on this, and you have to balance the cash. You have to balance the, how are the customers giving you good feedback or not? And then you have to make the decisions. Bezos actually said this early on. He's like, there's always a tension between what you see as a vision and what the customers want in the beginning. They're like, well, can you add this feature? And then you're like, do I spend the development effort to add this feature? And is that really what the product was envisioned to be, or do I stay with the vision? It's a constant tension.
Which way did you lean?
It's never one time. I mean, it's never discrete. You do it all the time. You have to reevaluate, and at the same time, you have to be willing to challenge your assumptions all the time. It's not. You go through and in the end, you have to make the call. Is this going to make enough money going forward? Is there enough customers behind this? Is it realizable in the right period of time?
Any other questions? In the back, front, right?
So,
yeah.
In terms of investment, when do you think it's a good time to approach to investor, or should we approach the investor, or
in today's world, okay, so it's getting kind of distorted. You've had bubbles where you had a lot of early stage, and then there was a drought in early stage, and there was a lot of Series A, meaning they want to see a product market fit and some customer selling, and then that kind of dropped, and then it's like a balloon that happens. Like the capital kind of tends to emphasize, like move around depending on the industry and the maturity of it. It's aligned to how developed your idea is. If you don't have customers, you're banking on an angel who believes in your vision. And hardware today is even harder because you have a capital requirement to get to build enough of whatever you're building and sell that out. So it's always better when you have customers, and it's always better when you're wanted. and then the investor, then you can go to the investors. But there's a lot of techniques on that. So if you want you talk to a lot of them. It's like dating. You're going to talk to 100. You're going to ask 100, people, and you're going to get 3 dates, and then you get like, it's a lot of that. Your courtship. Some people just like don't care. They might not even. They're like, I got all these other investments, or this doesn't like ring with it. And you just you have to. The thing when you do go to, my opinion on this is when you do want to talk to them, because you got to get a sense of what are they looking for. So what's the difference today between when we started is there's many more accelerators, there's many more business plan competitions, there's many more like opportunities to test your idea. One thing that I did when, and you can, every time you get feedback, you can improve your business plan. Every time you talk to a customer, you're improving your plan. And when we were students, we did a nanotech business plan, and we entered 4 business plan competitions. And we went to one set of judges, they gave feedback, we improved that before the next judge, and then we improved that. We kept just going in a loop, constantly improving based on the previous one's input. And by the time we got done, we did well in terms of the winnings. But it's the same thing with investors. We did outreach of 120 investors, and we evolved the business plan as a result of that before we got our initial set of investors. And it was a continuous process. So and even from us, we had 7 super angels in the beginning giving up, and we were trying to raise a smaller sum, and then we had a new set that came in at the end that said, look, we'll grow this even. They were more interested than the first 7 at higher amounts of initial investment. So when do you seek investors? What stage is your idea in?
We have a product that is working and it's been used, but we have a lot of plans and we're not sure because we are developers, right? So if we want to invest in that, we have to invest our not money but ours, and definitely money. So
do you have customers?
Yeah, we have.
Will they pay for it?
Yeah, they're paying for it, but it's report based, and every report give us a little bit or $1 or so. So we don't have a lot of money and a lot of.
And is there a big return? Like what size of investment are you looking for?
That's the main question. Should we look for the investment or not?
Yeah. You can get bad investment and you can get good investment. The tough part here is if you have it's changing, but if you have an investor who thinks they have an exceptionally good deal, and they don't give you enough money, they could hurt you. Or if they give you too much money, they could also hurt you. And you have to find the right fit with the investor. So in your case where you have some traction, or anytime you have an established product and traction, you pitch and get feedback from these. But it sounds like, it's different if you need 50,000 or 200,000 or, a million. And when you know how much you need, then you find the investors who invest in that category, and then you could search them out. Like you could search them out at any kind of investment forum and anything else like that.
But you think we should approach, or we should get an investment?
If you don't need to, don't.
Okay.
If you don't need investors, don't go for it, because you own it, and the fact that you're making money off of it, especially that you can get it to grow, is what you're really trying to do in the long run with investments anyway. think of investors as like Jupiter. They're going to slingshot you if they do it right, versus just like making your way out into, you're trying to use the gravitational pull of an investor to get you really growing fast. But if you're growing already, there's something I think it's called impatient for profits and patient for growth. So because you want to find what's the cash flow model as early as you can, because that's what the investors are paying for you as well.
G-Lab, you guys add something from your perspective?
And you can tell me that's completely opposite.
I don't know. Even like now with Dermograph, we're just thinking about like, how can you scale this product without more investment? Like that's the main question we're trying to answer. Is like, how can you be really lean and get the right resources that can sell this product profitably from day one? Like, the goal for us is like, how do we do this without more money going into it?
Yeah, I would add that if you're going to an investor, they're going to ask, what are you going to do with my money? And if you're not sure, or you don't know how you're going to take their money and turn it into positive returns for them, it's probably going to be a waste of like first pass connection with an investor.
Thanks.
Yes?
I have a question regarding guys came here, and it's very nice that you're sharing experience with us. But have you tried here with our MBA students, and what are your experience if you did? And have you met people from here, and how do you feel? Do they have enough practical knowledge to help and to start working? Because I'm coming from HR, and I do have a problem. I don't have any aging problem, but the issue is that people straight coming from universities are not ready to start working. They just want to go to MBA or whatever just to get a degree, but not thinking about get the job.
We've tried to engage students before, and I would happily do so. Part of it is a bias because I know what these guys can do out of the program, and but the other part is that I went to FUN and their case study competition. So that's where they had the skin vision case study. Some of them were very good, and they could come in as fresh students on there. I think I haven't reached out to like student programs partly as I'm not familiar enough with them, honestly. Like, to me, I would think Ekonomski Fakultet is probably the right one, but then people tell me it's not. And so I don't know. I'm not, and as a startup, you want people coming in who can immediately make an impact. Like, everyone has to pull their own weight. We've had 15-year-old interns come in to work on technical problems who are fantastic. They were just like creative, and they were doing stuff that was well beyond their years on a technical side. But those are far, it depends on the people. But in a startup in itself, you want people who can come in, make an impact, and pull. You can't. We tried to bring in students before, and you end up spending too much time.
There was a question there.
Can you please summarize the 10 years from idea to prototype and to a selling product here in Serbia?
Yeah.
The reason I'm asking is I'm part of a team that's trying to get the another medical product idea to sell. And production here in Serbia.
We've gone, it's not a traditional path. We've had multiple let me take medical right now. The clearest medical today is what we're doing now with our, we have an EU Horizon 2020 grant for acne. So it's a 2-year grant where we take the product that we have and we bring it through regulatory completion by the end of the 2 years. We're not doing that in Serbia. We're doing it all in Europe. So if you want to do it in Serbia, I won't be familiar. We didn't try to pursue the medical stuff here until relatively recent in what we were doing from a certification. We didn't, until we kind of went to Denmark. There's a CE mark as a medical device for the mobile app. But for what we're doing now in Germany and the UK, it's a 2-year project. And what we have is we're getting everything lined up to be able to launch in that 2 years. So for a medical device, you got to have a really good market ahead of that, because there's a lot of risk, depending on the class of it, that you could get held up by regulatory approvals. And as a startup, it's very hard to do this. We have a grant behind us to do it. But if I'm a startup doing a medical device, you got to look to either partner or it's not that easy.
And from the production perspective, you are producing here?
We produce some stuff here, we produce some stuff in China, and some stuff in Europe, in like EU. If you're prototyping, it's always best to be close to where you're prototyping it. So that timing happens. When you are ready to scale up, and only significantly, then you can go abroad. But it's so dependent on what the technology is and the hardware that some things can be easily done here, some things can be done abroad. It's really product dependent.
So we are coming to close the meetup. So any final questions before we come to an end? If not, I have one question for our guests. So where are the best cevapi around here that you guys tasted?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you guys very much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the great advice and stuff. And you guys also be around. If you want to learn more about Meetup Kako, follow us on Facebook or check out our website. And we're around here if you need to exchange any more content and stuff. So thanks so much for